What's up, Sen Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. Today's video is going to be a complete guide to Bibi. We're going to cover everything you want to know as a Bibi player so you can climb the leaderboards and just get better overall as a Brawl Stars player. So let's begin by talking about her main attack. So one of the most significant parts about Bibi is the fact that there's a huge delay before she actually uses her attack. So right when you release the attack button, there's going to be about 3/4 of a second that you have to wait for the whole animation to play through and before you actually deal damage. So this timing is something you really have to get used to if you want to get good with Bibi. But once that 3/4 of a second passes and that frame happens where you deal all your damage, you can use your next attack immediately. So always make sure you try to tap your attack button right as you're swinging, so that way you can just use your attacks as quickly as possible and output damage as fast as possible, because Bibi is very, very good at doing that. Now the attack itself covers a 135-degree arc of a circle, so that's just going to be 90 degrees plus half a 90 degrees. And the radius of her attack is 3 2/3 tiles. And your opponents don't need to be fully within the aiming guideline that comes up when you're dragging your attack. If you want to hit them, they just have to have any single part of their hitbox within that white area, and you're going to deal damage to them. Now the animation always shows her swinging in a counterclockwise direction, but actually the direction that she's swinging in is completely irrelevant. All the damage happens at the exact same time, and the damage area is just the area of the aiming guide. So there's nothing fancy going on with her attack, so where it tells you she's going to deal damage is exactly where she's going to deal damage. So you can't really take advantage of the direction in which she's swinging to hit around walls or anything like that. It's basically, if you see a part of your aiming guide going past the wall, then you are going to deal damage there. If you don't see it, then you're not going to deal damage there. And then of course you also have the ability to knock back your opponents just by using your main attack. So it takes 2 seconds to charge up that knockback ability after you already have your ammo maxed out, and you knock back all targets 4 tiles except for heavy targets like boss robots, which only go back 2 tiles. And this knockback can definitely be helpful to force people to drop the ball in Brawl Ball and hit them away from the goal, or to hit them in the gas and showdown or into your Ike turret's range and siege. There's a lot of good uses for it, but at the same time, knocking them back pushes them away from you and can sometimes prevent you from getting a kill. So in a lot of modes, when you're really only focused on killing people, you basically have 2 options. If they're close to a wall, you just want to hit them with your knockback into that wall so that way they can't escape and they're not really getting pushed away from you. They're just getting stunned for that little bit of time while they're being knocked back. And then you should be able to easily finish them off with the rest of your normal swings. Or if you're in a really open area and there aren't any walls nearby, then you actually just want to waste your knockback attack before you go in on someone, so that way you can make sure they always stay within range of your attack. Now do keep in mind, this will give you 1 less ammo, so if they're at full health, this usually isn't a good idea because you won't be able to get enough ammo fast enough to kill them before they're able to kill you. And another thing you can do to further optimize your attacking is actually to release your attack before you get in range of your target. Since obviously there's that delay before swinging, so if you use your attack a bit before you actually run into your opponent, then by the time the delay is over and you actually deal damage, you will be in range of that opponent. Since Bibi has a movement speed of 2.73 tiles per second normally, and it takes 3/4 of a second before you actually deal damage after you aim the attack, that means you can travel 2.05 tiles in that time. So you want to release your attack about 2 tiles away from your opponent at max if you want to play it safe, maybe closer to 1 or 1.5 tiles, and you're still going to be able to hit them with that first attack as long as you continue moving towards them. And you actually have the boosted speed from the home run star power, so in that case you're going to be having a movement speed of 3.06 tiles per second. So in that 3/4 of a second it takes to actually deal damage, you're going to be moving 2.3 tiles. That actually gives you a bit more distance to work with when you're trying to aim your attack before actually reaching your opponent. Now let's move on to tips and tricks with Bibi's super. So her super has a massive range of 40 tiles, and it covers that distance in about 5 seconds. And with your super, your goal is to always land more than 1 hit, unless there's a person that you're trying to kill and you've just used all your ammo and 1 shot from your super is going to kill them. In that case, it is okay to just get that 1 shot, but a lot of times you really want to aim for getting more than 1 shot, so that way you maximize the value you can get from your super. And also, if you get 2 super hits, then just 2 normal attacks will fully charge up your super again. So the more hits you get with your super, the easier it will be to get your next super and chain them over and over again. So the easiest way to guarantee 2 hits is if your opponent is near a wall, you just aim your super right at the wall behind them, and then it'll hit them as it's going towards the wall, then it'll bounce off, and as it's coming back, it'll also hit them. So there's not much your opponent can do to avoid this, so it's a very consistent way to always get those 2 hits from the super. Another good tip for using her super is you want to find tight spots on the map that have a lot of walls closer together, so you can just have the bubble bounce back and forth over and over again in that area. And if anyone's stuck in that area, they're going to take a ton of damage, even if they're not a player. If they're like the heist safe or the Ike turret in Siege, if there are a lot of walls near them, then you just aim your bubble appropriately and it'll just bounce back and forth over and over, dealing a lot of damage to that target. And when you're aiming for this, and just other times you're aiming your super as well, what you want to do is drag the super joystick really far away from the center, because if your thumb or whatever finger you're using is really close to the center of the super joystick, if you're like, for example, a centimeter off, it's going to have a pretty big impact on the angle at which your super is being released. But if you've already dragged the super joystick extremely far away from the center, then if you're off by about a centimeter, it's going to have a significantly less impact on the direction in which your super is being aimed. So you can aim a lot more precisely whenever you're dragging the super joystick very far away from the center point. And now once you've got this aiming down and you're in a position where you can't get those free 2 hits just by aiming at a wall that's right behind someone, then your general goal is to just sort of make your bubble cycle around to the same spot from where you shot it, because players usually move where the bubble just was because they thought they avoided it and they can now move there. But if it comes right back to that same spot, a lot of times it'll take them by surprise and you'll be able to get a lot of extra damage that way. So in order to make it come back to the same spot, you actually can't do this by only hitting 2 walls. You need to either hit 1 wall and just have it bounce back and forth, or hit 3 or more walls. So the simplest of these cases that we haven't already covered is if the bubble hits 3 walls. So essentially they all form a rectangle. And if you've taken any geometry course, you know that if you would aim the bubble at one of these walls with rectangular boundaries, its path is going to form a parallelogram. So essentially, if you want the bubble to cycle around to the exact same spot, you basically have to measure your distance from the left wall and then make sure the end of your aiming line is that distance away from the right wall, but on the opposite side. And then if you use your super, you can see it's going to come exactly back to where you started. Obviously, this doesn't need to be perfect in game. You really just want the bubble to generally return to where you originally shot it, because that's likely where people are going to be. And at the very least, just make sure you know the layout of the map, so that if you send the bubble off in some random direction, you want it to be able to come back to where all the people are gathered, which is usually where you are going to be. Now that we've covered Bibi's attacks, let's talk about her star powers. So the first star we're going to talk about is Home Run. It boosts her movement speed by 12%, and this star power is going to be great for modes like Siege or Gem Grab, because you can basically guarantee that you're going to get the first bolt or the first gem in the match, because you can just run straight to the center of the map, and since you're faster than every brawler in the game, you should be able to get it and get out pretty quickly. Now, if other brawlers also have movement speed buffs, like they're running their own Bibi or they're running a Jackie with the Gadget or something like that, then you will run into some issues. But overall, this is a very, very good star power to have, and even in modes that aren't Siege or Gem Grab, it is still just very, very good to be able to chase down anyone you want, because you can outspeed them. Now, batting stance is really, really good, mainly in Brawl Ball, because since you get the shield whenever your knockback bar is charged up, whenever you're carrying the ball in Brawl Ball and you're not going to be attacking anyway, your knockback bar is probably going to be full, and so you basically just get a free shield while you're carrying the ball. So it's going to make it a lot easier to just walk the ball in the goal, because you're going to be taking a lot less damage. Now, since Bibi has gotten a ton of HP nerfs recently, it's not as good in those situations, but I still think the star power is pretty good for that purpose in Brawl Ball. Overall, both star powers are really, really good, and you can really take advantage of either of them in any situation. And then finally, we'll wrap it up by talking about her Gadget. So this is where you gain 600 health per second for 4 seconds. That's a total of 2400 health you're gaining, but because it is over time, you have to make sure that you can make the most out of it. So you want to use it right before you're going into a battle, because that means you're about to take damage, and so you can ensure that you're not going to be at full health, so you'll actually gain that 600 health back. And you also don't want to use it in the middle of a battle or towards the end of a battle if you think you're about to die, because then you'll just die anyway and the health won't really matter. And if you've just finished a battle, you don't really want to use it immediately unless there's really need to go right back in and fight with other people again. What you don't want to do is just get greedy and just use this gadget basically anytime you need to heal, because you still obviously have that standard healing that kicks in after a couple seconds. So a lot of times that is going to do the job just fine if no one is attacking you, and using your gadget actually stalls that healing time anyway. So a lot of times it is better just to heal normally, but if you're just about to go into a battle and you're not quite at full health, use the gadget, and then as you start taking more damage, that 600 health is really going to come in handy. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Make sure to join the Send Squad by subscribing, turning on notifications, and going to settings and making sure you have notifications there enabled as well. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.